Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. So today we are talking about Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. This is the short story by Rae Carson in the Canto Bight collection of short stories that's part of the Journey to the Last Jedi. And this, more than anyone so far, and obviously we haven't looked at John Jackson Miller's story just yet, but this one so far ties more to the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary and the elements contained therein so much more than any of the other stories that we've talked about so far. In particular, we have Lexo Suger, who is the best masseur on Canto Bight. And you know, it's rather interesting how some of these people who are the best at their professions are really not actually doing very well financially. Whether it was him or Durla or Derma. Oh gosh, now I'm gonna have to double check this. Durla. It's Durla. I had it right the first time. So Durla is this incredible liquor sales being, and we have Lexo Suger in this short story, who is an incredible masseur, and yet both of them are, not doing very well. And Lexo is living in a very small apartment, barely furnished at all. As far as Durla goes, when she goes to Canto Bight, she is renting a hotel room, not in one of the main hotel rooms, which are too expensive and out of her budget, but in something that at least won't make her feel shameful about her status in society and what she's doing. So she's kind of manage her finances pretty carefully, and so does Lexo for that matter. You think these people would be better paid if they are at the top of their game, but I guess not so much somehow. Anyway, so Lexo you just saw, and Lexo is going to run afoul of a gangster in Canto Bight, and we've seen that gangster as well. That would be Big Sturg Ganna, and we find out from Lexo's adopted daughter Lula that Sturg has tried to turn people into informants for him, but one of the stable hands in the fathier's stalls was murdered despite the fact that he was turning into an informant for Sturg, and so yeah, that doesn't end well. And I guess Sturg has been trying to get Lexo to be an informant as well, because people just rattle off whatever while they're getting massaged by him. So, yeah, that's not going to go very well. And unfortunately, Sturg presses the issue. And I should say this before we continue further. This is a full spoiler podcast. So if you haven't read or listened to the audiobook version of the story and you don't want it spoiled for you, then hey, save this episode for a later date. But if you're okay with me continuing, then we will continue. So Sturg has Lula kidnapped. And that's so that unfortunately, Lexo has to do his bidding, Sturg's bidding, in order to make sure that Lula stays safe. Now, Sturg is doing this because he's trying to make a play for greater power in the underworld of Canto Bight, and he may have picked on the wrong guy, because even though Lexo has gone on to his hear nothing, say nothing, see nothing, or see nothing, say nothing motto of life, the reason why is because he's trying to leave a life behind. He used to be in the slave pits on a planet, and he was a medical guy there because he has excretions that come out of his fingertips, pheromones and whatnot, that can actually be helpful or harmful to various beings. And he actually used to be corrupt in those slave pits and get paid off to either boost people up or tear people down, chemically speaking. And he's tried to leave that behind. He's actually killed people as well, but this time it's personal. And so he sets out to figure out how to deal with Sturg once and for all. And in the process of all of this, he's going to encounter a number of other characters that we've seen depicted in the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary and have actually appeared on screen in the Last Jedi, even if briefly, including Neeper's Panpick scene here, who is a private investigator, as it turns out, and also the Countess of Canto Bight, who has a much longer and formal title, Contessa blah 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 blah, which we'll spare you with. And it's actually the Countess that ends up getting Lexo where he needs to be to rescue Lula by trading another favor, and that favor is to assassinate somebody who is being very loud about selling weapons to both the Resistance and the First Order. I guess it's gauche, as it says in the short story, to be so open about selling weapons and about double dealing on the weapon sales to both sides of the war. So that in itself is kind of interesting, of course, because we get a little bit of the taste of the broader galactic conflict. The fact that this person is selling weapons to the Resistance, and when the First Order finds out about it, they actually put an order in because they can't possibly find themselves outgunned and overmatched by whatever the Resistance has in terms of supplies and weapons and ammunition and whatnot. And the assassination takes place on a boat, the Undisputed Victor, and you actually saw that in The Last Jedi, as well as its captain, Baron Yasto Atzmon. And he's seen here talking to Ubiala. That would be the Ubiala who owned the gin joint that we talked about yesterday. And apparently this Sturgano wants to put Ubiala out of business and presumably take over some of it for himself, if not all of it for that matter. And Lexo manages to pull it off, and when he does, he gets the information he needs to find and rescue Lula, which he does in Sturg's lair, but unfortunately they get caught. Not before they happen to find a datapad in his personal library that has details about all the things that he's trying to do in Canto Bight. He said that there's a war coming and that it's going to be invisible for the most part, but that blood will be shed, and that's because he is trying to engineer some crazy takeover. Apparently he was behind or helping to finance the weapons sales this guy was doing that just got assassinated. He's also trying to put Ubial out of business, like I mentioned, and he's also apparently trying to push through legislation to have the Canto Bight police people replaced with droid speeders that he's going to be the one supplying. So he's just trying to make a mint out of Canto Bight. And incidentally, he is referred to as counselor from time to time, and so that suggests that he is the person who was after that bottle of rare wine that was talked about in the Wine and Dreams that we discussed in yesterday's episode as well. But thanks to a quick-thinking 13-year-old, his adopted daughter Lula, who doesn't just take the datapad but sends it off in a secure data burst while they can to the private investigator, now they have leverage when they get caught. So instead of being put to death, they are able to make a deal with Sturg where Lexo doesn't have to massage him anymore, and it's a pain in the butt to massage this guy, believe me. I mean, you've seen the photos. Not only that, but there are all sorts of other concessions they draw out from Sturg, and it includes 5 years of fathier lessons from Lula, because Lula really feels like she has a tremendous connection with the fathiers, and her ultimate desire is to be a fathier jockey. Now, when you find out about, the stuff in The Last Jedi about how badly the fathiers are treated, you're kind of like, hopefully she'll be much nicer than everybody else is as a jockey to the fathiers. And speaking of, you also get to meet Bargwill Tomder, which is the disgusting fathier stable chief, whatever his name is, the guy who's the head of the stables, the one that's whipping the fathiers and whipping the kids and all that. And bizarrely, he seems to have at least partly a heart of gold, because when he is paid to mess with the fathiers, some of the money that he gets, he says, I'm going to spend it on on gloves for the kids, like new gloves for the kids. And he's doing this while he's under some sort of truth pheromone chemical that's being applied by Lexo, so it's actually the real deal. Anyway, the story ends with a scene where Lexo is getting to massage somebody else, and there are these two little massage assistants who are now going to be the only ones massaging Sturg from now on. And, he's very happy now, Lexo is, because he doesn't have to do this massage work anymore. And if you watch the deleted scenes for The Last Jedi, you'll see this moment here just before Rose and Finn come crashing through the glass ceiling on their fathier. And this looks like it could be happening just before that scene in the novel, or I should say the novel or the short story. Wow, I'm going to get real tied up on that. The scene at the end of the short story where Lexo's massaging somebody else and those two little beings are crawling all over Sturg, that could be happening right before Rose and Finn's fathier crashes through the glass ceiling into Sword's bathhouse and spa in the short story and in the deleted scenes from The Last Jedi. Have I tied my tongue enough in knots over that one? Probably so. And that is going to do it for today's episode of the podcast. Over on the audio version at sw7x7.com/iTunes, we'll do a Last Jedi trivia question there, so do check that out. And in the meantime, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.